Just like we recently had a deity installation at Adi Kavi's house, and he has so much faith that he didn't require that we had to have a big fire sacrifice, etc., because Prabhupada says simply the sacrifice in Kali Yuga is chanting the holy names. And the fire sacrifice is not even complete without the chanting of the holy names. So this, the chanting of the holy name is actually the Yuga Dharma, Harinam Eva Kevalam, Kalonas Jeva Gatiranyata. Although there are remnants of the other ages there, then without that, because even sometimes we do some fire yoga for initiation or marriages, etc. But in the Samskar book, which directs those yogis, it says that no sacrifice is complete without the chanting of the holy name and the distribution of prasad. Although so many people, they still go for the havan or the fire sacrifice, but the important part actually is the holy name and the prasad. And these other things are there in small remnants, but even our fire sacrifices, if you compare them to the description of them in the Vedic literatures, then they would take months and months to prepare these things, whereas we take a couple hours, and we think that's too long. Whereas the kirtan of the Lord is actually just instantaneous. In Kali Yuga, we're looking for everything instant, isn't it? What's one of the most busy shops in the city centre? It's the chemist, isn't it? It's always busy. I remember when we used to go on book distribution, if we went to a new town, if you want to find a busy spot, you just look and see where Boots the chemist is or some other chemist, and you'll see that's where everybody's going, so you just put yourself somewhere in that spot. If you're not sure, you know that that's where people are going to be going. So Lord Chaitanya, he is known as Mahavadanya Avatar, most merciful incarnation. And he was certainly merciful to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So I'll just read a little bit of. So he displayed this six-armed form on 3 occasions. Does anyone know the 3 occasions or any one of them? So we mentioned one, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Another one was to Lord Nityananda, but that was different. That was in this form. Then he's displaying the 2 arms of Krishna, Ramachandra, and Lord Chaitanya. And the 6-armed form he displayed to Lord Nityananda was 6 arms of Vishnu holding different weapons and different ornaments. So at that pastime, Lord Nityananda is known as Avadut. Does anybody know what the term Avadut means? Or what they're under? Say that again, please. He doesn't follow them. So does that mean that most people in Glasgow are probably Avaduts? Or most people in Lesmahago? It's nearly there. Yeah. So he doesn't need, because he's transcendental to them. Like Krishna may make so many rules, but he's not bound by them. Otherwise it'd be something superior to him. He can make them and he can break them. But generally for the sake of, like he says in Bhagavad Gita, for the sake of the world's not being put into ruination, then he does upkeep them. So Lord Nityananda, he's Balaram. So when we see that Lord Ram, Krishna, and Lord Chaitanya are one and the same, then we can also see the same with his associates. So Lord Nityananda was Balaram, and he was also in Ramlila Lakshman. And that same mood is there. Lakshman is always ready to protect and serve the Lord. Although the Lord is Ajit, he's unconquerable, he doesn't, I said Ajit, not Egypt. He's he's unconquerable. Ajit, Jita means to conquer, Ajit means he cannot be conquered. Then sometimes the devotees still, just because of the rasa they have, is they like to protect the Lord. He doesn't need to be protected in any way, but this is a service they offer. And Balaram being Adiguru, he displays that service mood as Lakshman, as Balaram, as Lord Nityananda. But because Lord Nityananda, he is not bound by anybody, he's not bound by any rules, then sometimes he actually acts like that. Although it's considered that he's non-different from Krishna, then there's a slightly different mood. Well, probably more than slightly. So there was one time he had broken his danda and water pot, and the devotees were quite unsettled about this. But there was the reason for this is to show that sometimes the rules and regulations. Actually, I'll find the quote about it. For one who's on that platform of spontaneous devotional service, they're not bound by the rules, but still they follow them to set an example. But Lord Nityananda, he doesn't even have this conscience of setting an example, and he's so independent. He's the form of the Lord who kind of displays his complete independence like that, or autonomy. But when Lord Chaitanya gives him some direction, he immediately takes that seriously. So the devotees were concerned about Lord Nityananda's behavior. And Lord Chaitanya said, okay, come to Srivasa's house. We're going to have Vyasa Puja. So Vyasa Puja is the day where Veda Vyasa is honored as a compiler of the Vedas. And by doing so, then one's desires are fulfilled, one becomes peaceful, etc. So they had arranged for a Vyasa Puja ceremony in Srivas Pandit's house. And he was known as Pandit because he knew all the directions for doing these various types of worship and ceremonies, etc. So they'd arranged everything, and he gave Lord Nityananda the garland and says, okay, offer this to Vyasa now. But Lord Nityananda just stood there with the garland, and he mumbled something. Nobody could understand what he was saying, and he was looking around. And then the devotees said to Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda won't garland Vyasa, he's just standing there. So Lord Chaitanya went up to him, and immediately they garland Lord Chaitanya. And he was demonstrating that Lord Chaitanya is the cause of all causes. He's Krishna himself. He's the source of all knowledge. You don't worship Vyasa when Krishna's in the room. So at that point, Lord Chaitanya demonstrated his six-armed form to Lord Nityananda, who fell unconscious. Not just unconscious, but he seemed to lose all symptoms of life. And then Lord Chaitanya, he commanded him to come to external consciousness. And they basically said, he says, what's all this? Are you not happy? You came here to spread the chanting of the holy name. Everyone's chanting. And why are you going into this type of ecstasy? But Lord Nityananda was also, being Adiguru, he was also instructing. So he says, yes, he came to consciousness again. He says, yes, we're here, we're chanting the holy name of the Lord, but it's not enough. He says, we want that the Krishna Prema can be distributed to everybody. So this is also regarding not just the kirtan of the devotees behind closed doors, but the chanting of the holy name would be taking outside of the walls of the kirtan mandap, or the place where they were chanting. So the Lord displays these different pastimes in order to educate the devotees, in order to also bring about his mission. So his mission wasn't simply to come along and give Yuga Dharma of chanting the holy names, but to freely distribute Krishna Prema, even to the most considered unworthy. So I'll just see if I can find the actual moment. So when Srivas Pandit called Lord Chaitanya and said, oh, Lord, he was grassed him up. He says, Lord Nityananda won't garland Vyasadeva. So Lord Chaitanya appeared in the scene. He said, oh, Nityananda, please hear me quickly, offer the garland and then worship Vyasadeva. So Lord Nityananda, seeing Lord Chaitanya stand before him, he offered the garland to him. So he more than followed him. He wasn't inspired to offer the garland to Vyasadeva when Lord Chaitanya was standing there. And at that point, when he offered that garland, then Lord Chaitanya displayed his six-armed form. So the six-armed form that he displayed there, it says, Shankha Chakra Gada Padma Shri Hala Musala Dekhiya Murchita Haila Nitai Vivala. This is from Chaitanya Bhagavat. On seeing the conch, disc, club, lotus, plough, and musala, Nitai was overwhelmed and fell unconscious. Does anybody know what a musala is? What? Plough. Well, it says here, conch, disc, club, lotus, plough, and musala. Conch, disc, club, lotus, plough. You've got about another 5 guesses. Conch, disc, club. We're getting there. But I don't know. I didn't know what it is either, so I googled it. What is musala? And apparently, it's a grinding pestle. Musala, a long one, yeah. So apparently, this is also another type of weapon, which sometimes Lord Vishnu holds. So there was a nice article in the Back to Godhead by, I think it was Satyaraj Das, and he talks about the Lord appearing in these different forms, like Lord Chaitanya appears in the 6-armed form. There's also a description of Lord Nrsimhadev with the 1,000-armed form. We have Durga with 10 arms, and many other various armed forms. Chatur Bhuja, Lord Vishnu with 4 arms, and this is interesting because sometimes people who are skeptics, they'll say, like I think it's in the Bible, it says God made man in his image, but then people who are skeptical say, well, actually man made God in his image. Because we are men, we think, or because we're human, we think, so we're the top dog, so God must be like a human as well. And then sometimes people therefore conclude that either God is impersonal or that there is no God, it's just a man-made thing, because we think we're the gods. But these different forms of the Lord are there. It's anthropomorphism, where we think we make God in our image. That we don't see humans going around with 4 or 6 arms, except for there was one. Devotees immediately start laughing, right? Because you know which one it is. What was his name? He was Pondarika. Pondarika. Had to ponder on that. Oh, cringe. So Pondarika, he was saying, he was putting the word out that Krishna was bogus and that he's the real Vishnu. And he challenged Krishna to a fight. And he must have been so deluded. I mean, there's delusion, but when you declare yourself to be the 4-armed form, but you've got a couple of fake arms, stuck onto you, it's going to be more of an impediment, isn't it? Imagine trying to fight with somebody and you've got a couple of fake arms there getting in the road. So when it says that when the Pandavas heard of Pondrika. They said, Prabhupada says, they laughed for a very long time because they knew Krishna was unconquerable, but there's this imposter standing there with his fake arms. And of course, Krishna just gave him a slap, didn't he, with one arm. So he, many people, they may fake that they're God or they fake that they're a guru, but we're so fortunate that Prabhupada has given us so much knowledge in the Shastra where we can understand what is an incarnation of God. First, someone says, "Oh, I am God, worship me." So, okay, where is the reference in the Shastra? We don't need Shastra. Okay, hop it. Get back to the God incarnation factory, and someone says, you know, they put themselves forward as guru. They say, "Oh, that's fine. So, what's your parampara?" Just like we heard of some so-called guru who was part of a parampara, but now he's so advanced he doesn't need it. So immediately we think, bogus. And we wouldn't know that unless we had read Prabhupada's books, unless we've got that knowledge. We'd be easily fooled as well, wouldn't we? So in this sense, we're actually so much on the safe side. Just bear in mind, you know, these teachings there, don't forget them. And this way we can stay safe on the path and not be deviated by people who present themselves as either being God or by being guru. And Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, first thing he's saying regarding this is evam parampara praptam. That it must come into succession. You can't say, yeah, I was in succession, but now I don't need that. Immediately you think impersonalist. This is the view of the impersonalist, which is they learn everything from their guru, then they kill the guru, remove him, and they sit on his seat. So maybe not physically kill them, but basically they don't need. Same with deity worship. Even some impersonalists, they worship the deities, and the purpose is just to elevate themselves, and they don't need the deities. So they haven't understood properly. So this was, it can bring us to the next one, who received the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So just before we go into that, this is Lord Chaitanya's words to Lord Nityananda. The kirtan for which you incarnated to inaugurate is going on before you. What more do you want? And so this was regarding Lord Nityananda fainting in ecstasy upon seeing Lord displaying his six-armed form. And loving devotional service belongs to you, for you are the personification of ecstatic love. Unless you distribute this devotional service, no one can possess it. So this was Lord Nityananda beseeching Lord Chaitanya to distribute this devotional service. Sorry, no. This was Lord Chaitanya telling, because Lord Nityananda, he is known as Adi Guru, original Guru, which means the original servant. People think Guru is master, but Guru is actually teaching how to serve. So Lord Balaram, first expansion of the Lord, means that he's showing how to serve. So he's saying, okay, first of all, you came here to inaugurate the kirtan that's going on. What word do you want? Loving devotional service belongs to you. You're the personification of ecstatic love. Unless you distribute this devotional service, no one can possess it. So please control yourself and get up. Glance mercifully on your intimate associates and distribute this wealth to whomever you desire. So by the words of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda regained external consciousness. He became absorbed in ecstasy and seeing the six-armed form of the Lord. And know for certain that Ananta, in whose heart Gaurachandra resides, is none different from Nityananda. This form of the Lord is not astonishing, for all such manifestations are simply pastimes of his various incarnations. And here's also the connection, not just between Lord Chaitanya, Krishna and Ramachandra, but the natural characteristic of Nityananda is that he cannot give up the mood of servitorship for even a moment. So the same is there. Lord Nityananda is in that mood of serving Lord Chaitanya's desires. Lord Balaram is there in serving Krishna, and Lakshman is there in serving Sitanath or Lord Ramachandra. And they always exhibit eternal spontaneous service. In this way, the mind of Nityananda is always pleased in the service of Chaitanya Chandra. So the name Nityananda, eternal bliss, if we follow in the footsteps of Lord Nityananda, we find that song, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Koramori, Toma Bina Ke Doyalu Jagata Samsari. So in that song, I think it's Narottam Das Thakur wrote that song. Narottam Borodukin, no, that's a different song. But it's been explained in that song that because you are always happy, then I'm miserable in this material world, but if you can make me also happy. So here is the secret, that Lord Nityananda is always engaged in the service of Lord Chaitanya. And if we engage in that same service, then we too will become happy even within this material world. So moving on to Jagannath Puri. So Lord Chaitanya had many devotees in Bengal and also in Puri. And some of these devotees are listed. If you go to Jagannath Puri, you'll see the residences of some of these devotees and some of the places of pastimes. Paramananda Puri was, of all the devotees, Paramananda Puri in Swarup Damodar, with the heart and soul of the Lord. And in Puri you can find Paramananda Puri's well. There's a famous well which he used to drink from, and that is next to where his house would have been. Gadadhar, Jagadananda, Shankar, Vakrishwar, Damodar Pandit, Thakur Haridas, Raghunath Vaidya, and Raghunath Das. So these are some of the chief associates of the Lord in Jagannath Puri. All these devotees were associates of the Lord from the very beginning, and when the Lord took up residence in Jagannath Puri, they remained there to serve him faithfully. All the devotees who resided in Bengal used to visit Jagannath Puri every year to see the Lord. So he starts to list many of them. And then there was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, one of the biggest branches of the tree of the Lord, and his sister's husband, Sri Gopinathacharya. So the situation with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, so there's a book called the Gaura Ganadesha Deepika, the lamp which illuminates the associates of Lord Chaitanya. So there were some associates there. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was considered to be Brihaspati, the spiritual master of the demigods, and he was known as the most erudite scholar in India at that time. Not just the Brahmins, but sannyasis were also learning from him. But he wasn't a personalist. His house is still there in Puri. You can visit that. And the place where Lord Chaitanya displayed the six-armed form, the very room, you can visit that too. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, typically if we become a bit, even as children we have this thing, I know something you don't know, right? Even as adults we're like that. We pride ourselves in knowing something perhaps that someone else doesn't know, or we know more than someone else. Just like this morning we were talking about the one devotee who was very expert at remembering obscure Sanskrit verses, and he would rattle them off. He'd rhyme them off one after another. And one time he was doing this, and I let him go for about 30 verses. Oh, do you know this one? And we knew we didn't know them. So he was just kind of rubbing it in. So I just kind of let him use up all his ammo. I said, "Oh, do you know this one? Trinada piece and a China, Torora piece, isn't it?" Which, if you don't know that one, it means that one should be more humble than the straw in the street, taller than the tree, etc. So he actually he wasn't that proud because he immediately accepted, "Oh, you got me there." And so there was a nice exchange. But because this Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was so knowledgeable and he was getting so much glorification from his students, and there's a nice couple of movies, one called Nimai of Nadia and one called Nilachal Mahaprabhu, where Lord Chaitanya, although he was known as Nimai Pandit, a great scholar, then he went to study in the school of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and for 7 whole days, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya spoke about this verse at Maramas Chamunayo. Let's see if I can find it. It's known as the Atmarama verse. So basically, the thing of that is that the meaning of it is that Atmaramas Chamunayo Nirgranta Apyurukrame Kurvan Chai Ahaitukam Bhaktim Itam Bhuta Gunohari. So there he's talking about the liberated souls being self-satisfied. So he was going on explaining this for about 7 days, but in a impersonalistic way, missing the very point of it. And at the end of the 7 days, then he said to Lord Chaitanya, he says, "Nimai, have you heard everything I've said?" He says, "Yes." He said, "But you haven't got any questions?" He said, "Have you understood it?" He says, "Oh, I understand the verse very well, but what you're saying is nonsense." And then particularly in those days, and even nowadays, the remnants of Vedic civilization is you don't chastise your elders. But he says, "Murka" to me. He called him a fool, Murka, right? Or Mudha. And Sarvabhauma, you can imagine, the Supreme Personality of Godhead calling you a fool. It would carry a bit of potency. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was devastated. He was like, "What is this? I've just been called a fool by my student." And he says, "I understand the meaning of the verse very well, but you haven't explained it at all." So Lord Chaitanya goes on to explain it. And as Lord Chaitanya is explaining it, then he realizes that all his learning and his pride has just been stripped away from him. Let's see if there should be a verse here also regarding that. But the translation to that verse is, "Those who are self-satisfied and unattracted by external material desires are also attracted to the loving service of Sri Krishna, whose qualities are transcendental and whose activities are wonderful. Hari, the personality of Godhead, is called Krishna because he has such transcendently attractive features." So because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was able to comprehend the principles taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Lord's explaining of this, he got the mercy of the Lord and he accepted that perfect conclusion of the study of Vedanta. Then he considered that all he had previously learned and all he had taught to be ignorance, and therefore he immediately discarded it. So therefore he felt quite... Imagine you spend your whole life cultivating knowledge on something and discover that it was all wrong. That'd be quite devastating. And then he fell at Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet and he was just struck with wonder. He didn't know what was his next move was going to be. And he prayed, "O all opulent person of Godhead, your lordship is the beloved person who is glorified in the Vedic hymns. The people of the world cannot understand you in the least. O Prabhu, I am also a soul bewildered by your illusory energy." But in this life, by your grace, I have come in the presence of your lotus feet. And then he goes on to glorify him. In ancient times, you descended to the earth in the home of Vasudeva and slew many great demons. And now you're manifesting again in the home of a Brahmin, Jagannath Mishra. And then he says, since the passage of time has obscured the process of bhakti, the Lord has appeared in order to renovate that process, except in the name Shri Krishna Chaitanya. May the bee of my mind become absorbed deeper and deeper in the honey of his lotus feet. So after he recited these slokas, then he went home, and he was still somewhat disturbed by the whole thing. And Lord Chaitanya, being kind upon his devotees, then he went to, and knowing the mind of his devotee, he went to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house, and there, seeing him and in quite a humbled and sorrowful state, then he exhibited this form of Sadbhuj, where we talked about the previous form of Sadbhuj. He demonstrated to Lord Nityananda with the symbols of Vishnu, and this one he demonstrated that he's none other than Krishna and Lord Ramachandra. And therefore he blessed him, and because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was the head priest in the Jagannath temple, previously he was so caught up in the rules and regulations, and he was like, followed the caste system to the nth degree, so much so that even if you go to his house now, you can see there's actually a tunnel which goes from his house under the ground, under the streets, and comes up inside the Jagannath temple. People don't go down there any longer because they suspect, there'll be snakes and that. It's not used any longer. But the reason for that tunnel is that in those days, where the caste system was applied to such an extreme level, that if someone who was a Brahmin was touched even by the shadow of an untouchable, then they were considered to be unpure, and they had to go back and take a bath, put on clean clothes. So you could imagine you could be there all day trying to get to the temple. But such an artificial imposition, it's just all in the mind. But according to the strict rules and regulations which they had imposed upon themselves, then they had to follow all these rules and regulations. But after that, there was such a transformation in the heart of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that he would actually go and embrace all the lower caste people and get them to chant the holy names. He would, thus, Lord Chaitanya demonstrated through Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that even someone who has been on the most highest level of following rules and regulations, if you just take the holy name, then the rules and regulations, which are unnecessary, we don't have to follow. But there are necessary rules and regulations which apply, which are conducive for chanting the holy name. So we shouldn't think, oh great, I'll just nip down the pub, get a wee flutter on the horses, I'll just chant Hare Krishna. Actually, we knew one boy who used to go to the pub, he'd get drunk and then he'd start chanting very loudly. He was very dear to the devotees, he was quite an unusual character, but he was always chanting, so that was a good thing. But he wasn't propagating that he was above the rules and regulations. He was humble enough to know that he wasn't following them properly. But so many rules and regulations, Prabhupada said, if we have to follow them all properly, you would faint. But we should learn some of the ones, which are necessary so that we can advance in devotional service. And essentially, Prabhupada gave us the 4 rules and regulations. But the essence of that is that which is favorable for remembering Krishna, we accept, and that which is causes us to forget Krishna, then we reject that. And then there was a third time where Lord Chaitanya displayed the 6-armed form. there's some references to that. I tried to find the references were given. But yes, Satyaraj Das, Prabhupada disciple, he wrote an article in the Back to Godhead magazine discussing the 3 times where Lord Chaitanya displayed his 6-armed form. And he mentions that Maharaj Prataparudra also got that form displayed to him. I tried to look at the references so I could read from them, but I wasn't able to find them. So I can't say much about that. But Maharaj Prataparudra, he wasn't a small fry. He was a great king, and he wasn't just a great king in a small kingdom. At that time, 500 years ago, then there were many Muslim rulers in India, and he had defeated Hussein Shah, and he'd also defeated many other great kings. And he was given advice to take Vaishnava initiation, which he did. And he wanted to meet with Lord Chaitanya, but Lord Chaitanya says, I don't meet with pounds, shillings, and pence people. So he knew he was a great devotee already, but he was showing, that just because he's a great king, then sannyasis shouldn't be just mixing with great kings, opulent people who have got great prestige, etc. So that when Lord Chaitanya says things, there's great lessons there to be learned. And sometimes we see devotees do mix with these types of people, but with service in mind. If they mix with them for the purpose of just getting a selfie with them, then that's another thing. But if the purpose is always how to engage them in service, or how by that association we can further the movement, then that's always the meditation of the devotee. Stita di Muni, that's explained in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where the devotees are always agitating their mind to think of new ways to spread Krishna consciousness, and they're always thinking, how is this situation favourable for Krishna consciousness? How can we make it favourable? So we see in Prabhupada's example, he would try so many things to see what would be favourable. And devotees would approach him with different ideas, and he would say, yes, try this, try that. And I remember Shiva Ramswami also telling us that try so many things, but don't be so attached to a particular program if it's not working. If it's not making devotees, if it's not bringing people to Krishna consciousness, then just be prepared to drop it. Because the main thing is we have a limited time on this planet, and we've been given the process of devotional service, and our goal is to take it to others. So Maharaj Prataparudra, then he attempted to get Lord Chaitanya's darshan, or audience, and he understood that if he goes through the devotees who are very dear to the Lord, then maybe he's got a chance. And the devotees were very much in favour of this Maharaj Prataparudra. They knew that he was a very humble devotee, even though he was a great king and successful king, powerful. You can read history about him, and you can see that he was, as we say, he wasn't a small fry, but still he was a humble devotee, and yet a very powerful king. So eventually, Lord Chaitanya agreed to meet him. And on Rath Yatra, we often see that we have a broom and someone sweeps in front of the chariot. So does anyone know what that represents? That's right, yeah. And it was originally Maharaj Prataparudra. To get the favour of the Lord, he went in front of Lord Jagannath's chariot. Although he was the king, he went in front of the chariot with a broom, and he was sweeping the road in front of the chariot. He accepted a very humble role, and the Lord was very pleased with him. So you can read more about that pastime. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to find the direct references, so I can't speak much about that. But apparently, the Lord very kindly revealed that form to him as well. So, just before we finish up, there's some nice verses by Lochandas Thakur. I'll skip the Bengali because if there's some Bengali speakers here, they probably laugh at my pronunciation. But the English says here that in Lochandas Thakur's Chaitanya Mangal, we find the following verses which give us a deeper understanding of the six-armed form. They depict a scene that occurs just after Sri Chaitanya takes sannyas, the renounced order of life. At that time, the Lord offers a prayer to his danda, his renunciant staff, saying that it is essentially identical to his bow and arrow and flute. So here we have it. O my danda, although I have given up everything by becoming a sannyasi, still you have not given me up. You stay by my side, accompanying me life after life. When I was traveling in the forest as Ram, you were always in my hand as my bow and arrow. During my pastimes as Krishna, you were always there in my hand as my flute, captivating the entire world with divine love. And now, after I have abandoned everything as a sannyasi, still you remain with me as my danda in order to vanquish the non-believers in Kali Yuga. This prayer brings to light a little-known dimension of the six-armed form, showing a spiritual connection between the items the Lord holds in his hands, particularly those when he descends as Ram, Krishna and Chaitanya. Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, gives us yet another inner meaning of this form by showing his associates this divine manifestation. Lord Chaitanya is bringing, by showing his associates this divine manifestation, Lord Chaitanya is bringing to light his teachings of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, or the inconceivable and simultaneously oneness and difference between the Lord and his various forms and energies. The Prakash or expansion, the avatar, the incarnation, the Shaktis or energies, and the Bhaktas or devotees are not separate from the Swayam Rupa or the original personality of Godhead, writes Srila Saraswati Thakur. Within Krishna Chaitanya, all of them are individually included with simultaneously distinct characteristics. To exhibit this Achintya Bheda Bheda philosophy, in his Gaura Leela, the Lord displayed his six-armed form to Lord Nityananda. So in conventional Vaishnava discourse, then we understand the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda refers to the Lord's nature of being one with and different from his energies. But here, we're given a further meaning. Indradyumna Swami, some of you may know Indradyumna Swami, he summarized this as follows. The Sadbhuj Murti means Dharma, Ananda, and Prema. So as Lord Ramachandra, then he taught perfect Dharma. And as Krishna, his Leelas brought great Ananda or bliss to the devotees. And as Lord Chaitanya, then he was freely distributing Prema. And here, Prabhupada is saying that although God, showing God's many arms basically serves two functions, which can especially be seen in the four-armed Vishnu. He has two hands to address the negativity of demonic and two for the pleasure of the devotees. When Krishna comes, he has two businesses, Paritranaya Sadhunam and Vinashaya Chaduskritam, giving protection to the devotees and for killing the demons. So as Krishna is present, he exhibited these two things. And generally it's considered the club and the disc are for the non-devotees, and the lotus and conch are for blessing the devotees, giving benedictions. And then also Kavikarnapura in the 16th century, he mentioned that with these 6 arms, you kill the 6 enemies of the world. So, does anybody know what the 6 enemies are? Don't list your neighbours and your members of your family, etc., or people you don't get on with. 6 enemies. No, these are that's 6 different things. You were going to say the same thing, right? Lust, yeah, exactly. So, in case you didn't hear that, then the 6 enemies are lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and envy. So, these are the 6 enemies of the soul. If we're under the control of these things, then this is considered to be enemies because it's robbing us of our eternal well-being. So we'll just stop there. Anyone get any comments or questions? Paul?
Well, 2 connected questions. When Lord Chaitanya shows his form to Lord Nityananda, did the other devotees who were there, did they see that, or was it only Lord Chaitanya, or only Lord Nityananda?
Good question. So let's see if there's anything mentioned about that. I don't remember it saying that, but let's see if there's anything in the commentary. Well, the fact that somebody wrote it down, unless Lord Nityananda told them, would indicate that somebody must have seen it. Yeah, I'm just not seeing anything directly there which says, this witnesses, it was witnessed by various devotees. But somehow or another, then Murari Gupta, who wrote this, then he knew about it. He would have been there because he was also one of the Lord's associates. They certainly witnessed the Lord Chaitanya losing consciousness and falling to the ground because all the devotees became frightened and prayed to Krishna to protect him. Yeah, it doesn't directly say that anyone else seen that, but we somehow or another know about it, unless anybody else knows anything about that. And next question.
What was, we can see in the other 2 instances, Lord Chaitanya, or presume, I presume, in those other 2 instances, he was establishing to the devotees that he was the supreme personality of God. But Lord Nityananda already knew that. So, was his purpose simply to just, and there may not be any information, but was his purpose in the, when he showed the additional form to Lord Nityananda, was it simply just to give him pleasure?
Well, it certainly did. Although Lord Chaitanya was Chana avatar or hidden incarnation, and sometimes he would do things to demonstrate without a shadow of a doubt that he's none other than the Sarva Karna Karnam, the cause of all causes. So the devotees were wondering, why would Lord Nityananda not garland Vyas when he was asked to? Like it says here that when Srivas Pandit gave the garland to Lord Nityananda and says, okay, give the garland to Vyas, and he mumbled something, started looking around, then he wasn't going to give the garland to Vyas when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is in the room. So at that point, then he was demonstrating to all the devotees Here is, the source of all knowledge. Whatever knowledge is coming from Vyas is, manifesting originally from the Lord, etc. So, and then the Lord immediately displayed that form as well. Although sometimes when the devotees would say, "We know who you are," he'd say, "No, I'm not Krishna." But here he didn't argue. He displayed that form. And so your question specifically again was?
Lord Chaitanya doesn't need to, he's establishing is that Lord Nityananda already knows he's the Supreme Person. So was the reason for his claim to call Lord Nityananda simply just for the pleasure of Lord Nityananda? No other reason.
Well, when the Lord does something, there's many reasons. Some we know of and some we don't know of. But what we know of from this pastime is that whether Lord plans it or whether he takes the opportunity, I mean, the Lord is in full knowledge always, Desha, of Trikalagya, past, present, and future. So it's not necessarily like, okay, now's a good opportunity, let me try to make something of this. No, he's in full knowledge. So one thing he did do, we hear he says that Lord Nityananda, you've got, you come here to do your kirtan, what more do you want? And then basically he was instructing him that you are the original spiritual master. You teach everybody. Without you teaching everybody devotional service, you can't pass away, because it said that he'd lost consciousness, but he wasn't just like unconscious. All symptoms of life seemed to have left him for some reason, in such ecstasy he experienced. And then the devotees were praying, Krishna Rakshamam, Krishna Payamam, or Krishna protect the Lord. Of course, the Lord doesn't need any protection, but this is heightened ecstasy of the devotees. And Lord Chaitanya, he was instructing him, that, okay, you need to teach the devotees devotional service. So that opportunity was there to instruct, or to bring out this thing. It's chanting the holy name is one thing, but that wasn't enough. It's actually devotional service. So there are many people who chant the holy name, and some of these sects are Sahaja sects. They'll chant, and some of them, they can fake ecstasy and roll about, and a bucket of cold water can usually solve that. And they may even speak philosophy, etc., and they can squeeze some tears out of the eyes as well. They can imitate these symptoms, or they just get so much caught up in the emotion of things that they convince themselves, of something. But without the practical application of devotional service, so the Lord was demonstrating that, yes, the Yuga Dharma is chanting holy names, but I've come to teach you devotional service. And Lord Nityananda, you're Adiguru, you have to teach them that. So he was teaching all the devotees how to serve properly. So these are certainly lessons which have been demonstrated through that. And there's other pastimes as well where Prabhupada says that we cannot understand, like that pastime of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda when they visited Advaita Acharya's house and they started insulting each other. Then Lord Nityananda, Advaita Acharya had cooked a big feast, and Lord Chaitanya sat down and said, "I'm a sannyasi, I can't eat all this." And it was, when they talk about a palm full, they don't mean like a palm, they mean like a palm leaf. So there's mounds of prasadam there, and they'd been fasting for 3 days, and Lord Nityananda says, "Today I thought I was going to break my fast, but you've just given us a morsel." And Lord Sri Advaita Acharya, he says, he insults him, he says, "You're a reject Paramahamsa." So by that, he basically means that you are above rules and regulations. You do not belong in any varna or ashram. You're not bound by these things. Although it appears like an insult, is actually a glorification. In the material world, sometimes things seem like a glorification, but you think, how come they just said something nice, but I feel I've just been insulted? You ever experienced that? So that's, but this was opposite. In the spiritual world, things are opposite. So, of course, as sadhakas, as devotees learning the practice of devotional service, we shouldn't try to be too over familiar and insult devotees and expect them to see the glorification behind it. Familiarity breeds contempt. So he glorified Lord Nityananda by calling him a reject Paramahamsa, that he wasn't even Paramahamsa, no one can understand him. So sometimes people will imitate that too. They'll kind of imitate the external features of this, going about like a madman, but they actually are just mad. So don't be fooled by it. And then Lord Nityananda, he insulted Advaita Acharya by calling him a monist, an impersonalist. Your name's Advaita, you're an impersonalist. Anyway, the point is that in the purport, Prabhupada says, who can understand the minds of these two great personalities? So he didn't try to explain it. We can only understand a little bit of it. And with Krishna's pastimes, there's many things done at one time, like when he chastised Kaliya. Then he could have killed Kaliya, but he chastised him because the prayers of the Kaliya Nagapatnis, the wives of Kaliya, they prayed to spare him, so he just chastised them. But it's also been described that when Lord Krishna danced on the heads of Kaliya, that his footsteps mimicked the movements of the planets in the universe, and there's many other things listed too. So we just see a little, just like our Bhagavatam, we think it's a big book, 30 volumes, but it's described that this is only a fraction of the Bhagavatam of the demigods. And there's many incarnations as there are waves in the sea, so the countless incarnations. So just one last thing is this thing of people thinking that man has made God in his image, then the fact that the Lord takes these forms of the Sadbhuj, Chaturbhuj, 6-armed, 4-armed forms, or Nrsingadev with the 1,000-armed forms, or Matsya, Kurma, Nrsingadev, then these are demonstrations of, and it says that the Lord appears in every species. So it's not that simply our conception of God is limited to just human form. Okay, is that okay? We can finish there. ISKCON Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sadbhuj ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.